Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. It's your girl Zara, and today we're heading deep, and I mean deep, into the Aussie outback. We're talking about a place so tiny, it makes a one-horse town look like a bustling city. Larrimah, Northern Territory. Population, last count, about 11. Yeah, you heard that right, 11. But don't let its size fool you, because this speck on the map is home to one of Australia's most head-scratching, mind-boggling unsolved mysteries: the vanishing of Paddy Moriarty and his trusty dog, Kelly. One minute, Paddy's having his usual arvo beers at the local pub. The next, gone. Him and his dog just vanished into the red dust and the spinifex. Was it a tragic accident in the unforgiving wilderness? Or did one of Larrimah's famously feuding residents finally decide to take things way too far? This story, you guys, is a wild, wild ride full of eccentric characters, bitter rivalries, and a whole lot of unanswered questions. Honestly, it's the kind of case that just gets under your skin. Did a town of 11 people manage to make one of their very own disappear without a trace? Now, before we get deeper into today's case, I want to take a moment to talk about something that comes up again and again in the stories we cover here: digital footprints and personal safety. So many of the cases we talk about involve online stalking, data being exposed, or perpetrators using the internet to track their victims. It's a chilling reminder of how vulnerable we can be online and why taking control of our own digital privacy is so incredibly important to me. That's why I'm so grateful to have NordVPN sponsoring today's video. You guys know what a VPN is by now: a virtual private network. For me, using NordVPN is the absolute first step I take before I do anything online. Their mission is to make the internet a safer, more secure, and accessible space for everyone. With just one click, it does two crucial things. First, it hides my IP address, basically making me a digital ghost. It means my location and online identity are shielded from prying eyes. Secondly, it wraps up all of my internet traffic in powerful encryption, so whether I'm at home or using a sketchy public Wi-Fi at a cafe or at an airport, all my data, my passwords, my financial information, my search history is completely unreadable to anyone trying to snoop. But honestly, the reason I truly love it, especially for my family, is a feature called Threat Protection Pro. This goes way beyond a standard VPN. It's like having a dedicated security guard for your browser. It automatically scans the files you download for malware, and it blocks you from landing on any malicious websites. Think about all those phishing links or fake scam websites we hear about. Threat Protection Pro is that shield that stops you from making a catastrophic mistake. And despite all that security, it's the fastest VPN on the planet, so I can still stream shows from other countries' libraries or do my research without any lag or buffering. Plus, one account protects up to 10 devices, so I have it on my phone, my laptop, and then my family can use it too. It gives me genuine peace of mind, and I wouldn't recommend it if I didn't use it and believe in it myself. So I've partnered with them to get you guys an exclusive NordVPN deal. You can get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 months free, by going to nordvpn.com/Zara. And it's completely risk-free, guys. If you're not happy, they have a 30-day money-back guarantee. Your online security is so important, so take that first step and check it out at nordvpn.com/Zara. The link is in the description box below. All right, now let's get back to today's case. If you're as fascinated by the mysteries that lie beneath the surface as I am, then you are definitely in the right place. Here, we delve into the world of true crime, trying to piece together the puzzles. If that sounds like your kind of investigation, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join our awesome community. And hey, while you're down there, if you could also smash that like button, it honestly is the best way to help the channel grow and for more people to hear about these important stories. And don't forget to share the video. You never know who might have that one tiny piece of information. Also, if you stick around till the end of the video, I'll let you guys know how we can get just a little bit more intimate on the daily. All right, grab your tea or coffee or your giant bottle of water and get comfy, because we're about to unpack the bizarre disappearance of Paddy Moriarty. Let's get into it. So picture this, the Northern Territory, Australia. We're talking vast, unforgiving, and seriously remote. Smack bang in the middle of this is Larrimah. And when I say small, I mean it. At the time, we're talking about around 2017, so there were only about 11 or 12 people living there. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone else's business, what they had for breakfast, and as this case chillingly reveals, who they've got beef with. And it was from this tiny isolated dot on the map that 70-year-old Paddy Moriarty and his beloved Kelpie Kelly vanished. Poof. Gone without a trace on December 16th, 2017. 1 minute, Paddy's doing his usual thing, having a few beers at the pub, the Pink Panther Hotel. The next, he and Kelly are just gone. Swallowed up by what they call the Never Never. And trust me, that name perfectly describes this harsh, scrubby, and pretty damn enigmatic landscape. It's a place where it's all too easy to get lost or perhaps to be made to disappear. Now, Larrimah's isolation is extreme. The nearest police station is about 70 kilometers away in Mataranka. That kind of remoteness creates a really peculiar dynamic in a town where you literally can't be anonymous. Every little interaction gets magnified. Long-standing fights and grudges between neighbors can just simmer and boil over for years without the usual ways people in bigger places might sort things out or get away from each other. This small-minded environment has a life of its own. So Paddy's disappearance, it's not just a missing person case, you guys. It's this really unsettling peek into the unique pressures and the simmering, explosive tensions of life in such an extreme micro community. The big question that's had Australia and honestly people all over the world scratching their heads is, what on earth happened to Paddy Moriarty? And what does his vanishing tell us about the strange, secretive, and maybe even dangerous heart of Larrimah? You guys, when I first watched the documentary years ago, I was just sucked in. At first, I was like, there's a place like this that really exists. But then you get into the dynamic of the people and the culture of the town, and it's honestly mind-blowing. So Larrimah, it's just this tiny speck on the Stuart Highway, roughly 500 kilometers south of Darwin. It wasn't always this quiet though. Back in World War II, it was actually a pretty important military hub. It was the railhead for the North Australia Railway, and the nearby Gorey airfield was the largest staging airstrip in the area. So big stuff, right? But like a lot of places whose purpose is tied to a specific event, once the war ended and the airfield was decommissioned in 1946, Larrimah's importance just faded, and so did its population. What's left is a town that's often described with this air of outback weirdness. It's populated by these really quirky, eccentric characters, most of them who are quite elderly, who've lived there for decades. At the time Paddy went missing, we're talking about literally 11 or 12 people. There is essentially no technology here. You can't even fuel up your car. There's no police. And people keep to themselves in this tiny outback town in the middle of nowhere. This slow decline of the town from a bustling past to its present day silence probably just intensified the pressures on the few people still hanging on. With fewer people, fewer resources, and not many distractions, those little interpersonal issues and old grudges, they just had nowhere to go. They just festered, cooped up within this tiny community. As some sources pretty bluntly put it, everyone hates each other. Ouch. Among the key players in this tiny town were Fran Hodgetts, who ran the now infamous Devonshire Tea House. She was known locally as the Pie Lady. Then there was Barry Sharp, the longtime owner of the Larrimah Hotel, more famously known as the Pink Panther Pub. These guys and Paddy himself were central figures in this tangled web of relationships and, more importantly, rivalries. The town's reputation for infighting was legendary, like a constant background hum to their daily lives. So who was this man at the center of it all, Paddy Moriarty? Well, Paddy was born way over in Limerick, Ireland on March 30th, 1947. He came to Australia as a young guy, around 18 or 19.
Yeah, I'm Paddy, from Ireland.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it came out in 66.
Like many Irish immigrants of the time, he carved out a life working hard in the outback. He was a ringer on cattle stations, a grader driver, a general station hand. If it was tough work, Paddy probably did it. Around 2008, Paddy moved to Larrimah from another small place called Daily Waters. In 2010, he bought this unused service station for about $30,000, and that became his home. At the time he disappeared, he was 70 years old. He wasn't a big guy. He stood about 165 centimeters, that's my height, or 5 foot 5 inches tall. And he did have a history of ischemic heart disease, which is something to keep in mind. Paddy was widely known as a larrikin. So, for those who are not familiar with Aussie slang, that's someone who's a bit mischievous, a bit of a joker, maybe even a bit of a pot stirrer. He enjoyed a tall tale, a bit of banter, and sometimes his humor could be a bit abrasive.
Hello, excuse me. We're English. We're lost. We're trying to find the Larrimah roadside inn.
Oh, why don't you go and fuck yourself, you pommy bastards?
Thank you.
This playful, sometimes prickly nature meant he was a very prominent and often contentious figure in Larrimah's tiny social scene. While some folks found his antics amusing, others, especially those who were on the, receiving end of his taunts or his actions, viewed him a bit differently. Some called him a mean drunk or an unholy terror. He wasn't shy about getting involved in local rivalries too. The most famous one was the Pie Wars, where he very publicly championed the pies from the pub over the ones made by his neighbor Fran Hodges at her tea house, the Devonshire Tea House. This kind of stuff inevitably created or deepened existing bad blood. There were even stories floating around that Paddy had been run out of town from a previous place he lived, which kind of suggests a pattern of behavior that could lead to serious conflict. In a small town like Larrimah, Paddy's personality and his actions had this magnified impact, making him a central figure in the town's ongoing dramas. A real constant in Paddy's life was his dog. Now, initially, he owned a black and white border collie named Rover that Paddy had when he first bought the property in 2008, but sadly, Rover died in December 2016. So eventually, Paddy started thinking about getting another dog, and in early November 2017, he was given an 11-month-old red Kelpie by the name of Kelly by a friend who worked at the cattle station. Kelly was always by Paddy's side. She was often seen perched on the back of his quad bike as he zipped around town, and her vanishing at the same time as Paddy would become a super crucial piece of this whole mystery. Paddy was a man of routine, absolute clockwork. He was known for keeping his place spotless and for being meticulous in his work at the Larrimah Hotel. It has a Pink Panther theme, hence the name Pink Panther Pub. It has accommodation and a zoo with over 700 birds and animals, including a 3.5-meter crocodile. Paddy cleaned the camp toilets, did laundry, tended the gardens, and helped make up the rooms. His daily schedule was like scripture to him. A morning walk with Kelly, then a ride on his quad bike to the hotel for work until about midday. After that, it was his time. He'd spend the afternoon sipping beers and welcoming visitors. He sat in a particular chair on the left-hand side of the main entrance out the front of the hotel with his dog beside him. He was bold and apparently a bit sensitive about it, so he always wore thongs, flip-flops for my international viewers, and a hat or a cap when he was out and about.
It was real shy because it was bold as a ball.
All right, so let's get to that fateful day, Saturday, December 16th, 2017. For Paddy, it started out like any other day. He followed his routine to a T. Morning walk with Kelly, then off to the Larrimah Hotel on his red Honda quad bike. Kelly riding faithfully on the back. He did his jobs at the pub, cleaned the toilets, the showers, the standard stuff. In the afternoon, he settled into the bar area, and we know that at 2:29 p.m. he made an FPOS transaction. He withdrew $40 cash and bought 4 XXXX gold beers. A regular habit, nothing out of the ordinary there. Paddy was last seen leaving the Larrimah Hotel sometime between 6 and 6:30 p.m. that evening. He hopped on his quad bike, Kelly with him, for the short 400 to 800 meter journey home. It's barely a hop, skip, and a jump. Before we delve deeper into the unsettling details of this case, I want to take a moment to give a huge shout out to my incredible channel members. Your support honestly makes it possible for me to dedicate my time to researching and bringing you these stories. If you're as passionate about true crime as I am and want to be a more active part of this community, I'd love for you to consider becoming a channel member. You will not only help sustain the channel, but you also get instant access to our private Discord server. That's where the conversation really continues. We can have in-depth discussions about the cases I cover, share theories, and honestly, just chat about life and anything else that comes to mind. It's a great community of like-minded people, and I'm in there every day. So if that sounds like your kind of place, you can click the join button below this video. Okay, let's jump back in. Later that night, around 10:30 p.m., there was significant rainfall. And that, you guys, is an environmental factor that could have seriously impacted any potential evidence left behind. It wasn't until Monday, December 18th, 2017, that people really started to worry. Paddy, this man of unwavering clockwork routine, failed to show up at the pub or for his work duties on Sunday, and then again on Monday. Barry Sharp, the owner of the Larrimah Hotel and a friend of Paddy's, started to get a bad feeling. Around mid-morning on that Monday, Barry went over to Paddy's place. He knocked, he called out Paddy's name, nothing, no answer. He found the back screen door was unlocked, so he went inside. The house was neat and tidy, just as Paddy always kept it. But Paddy and Kelly, nowhere to be seen. And crucially, the back gate to the property was open. Barry initially thought, okay, maybe Paddy is just out walking Kelly. So he drove around the local dump road, which was a common walking route for Paddy, but there was no sign of them. When Paddy still hadn't surfaced by Tuesday, December 19th, Barry knew something was seriously wrong. He contacted the police, who, remember, were 70 kilometers away in Mataranka. Police officers finally arrived in Larrimah on Wednesday afternoon, December 20th. That's 4 whole days after Paddy was last seen. 4 days. In a missing person case, that's an eternity. The state of Paddy's home really painted this eerie picture, like a life just abruptly frozen in time. There were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry. His usual cap or cowboy hat, because, he was never without one, his wallet, his quad bike keys, his reading glasses, and his key card were all found on the table. A meal of roast chicken, which had been a gift from some visitors at the hotel on the day he disappeared, was in the microwave, ready to be heated up. In the bedroom, Kelly's food bowl was half eaten. A pedestal fan was on, pointed towards the bed. The kitchen fan was also on, and the bed didn't look like it had been slept in. The back screen door was unlocked, only secured by a mat and a concrete block. And this was a door Paddy always locked from the inside if he ever left Larrimah. The back gate to his property was also open, which was super unusual because he always kept it shut to keep feral donkeys out if he was leaving town. And here's a chilling detail. A baseball bat was discovered underneath the bed. This frozen moment crime scene, as the coroner later called it, strongly suggests that Paddy got home, started his evening routine, and then something or someone interrupted him. The items left behind, his wallet, his keys, implied that he had no plans to go out again. The prepared food for himself and for Kelly points to a normal evening being cut short. That unlocked back door and the open gate, so contrary to his usual habits, are particularly telling. The coroner later noted that Paddy probably voluntarily went outside. This makes theories of him just wandering off or having an accident far from his home seem much less likely. Whatever happened to Paddy, it likely occurred after he got back to his property, possibly something luring him outside or happening just beyond his doorstep. And that baseball bat under his bed, it really hints that maybe, just maybe, Paddy harbored some concerns for his own safety. So the official search for Paddy and Kelly began with a massive handicap. That delay in reporting them missing meant those crucial early hours, the golden hours in any investigation, were lost. Once it did get underway, police conducted these really extensive land and air searches. We're talking teams on foot, on motorbikes, and in helicopters, scouring this huge area up to 30 kilometers north and south of Larrimah and covering a 10-kilometer radius around the town itself. They searched older World War II bunkers, remote sites, everything. The initial search, which was actually suspended on December 23rd, 2017, was operating under the assumption that Patty might have suffered a medical event like a heart attack or had some kind of misadventure like getting lost or bitten by a snake. But by December 28th, just 5 days later, the focus started to shift. The possibility of foul play was looking more and more likely, and that led to a more targeted evidence search. Investigators faced a mountain of challenges. Larrimah's extreme remoteness made logistics a nightmare. The surrounding environment is just as brutal. It's a sprawling expanse of bushland dotted with sinkholes and old mine shafts. And then there are the crocodiles. Any of these could easily conceal a body or grimly dispose of one. Scavenger animals could also quickly obliterate evidence, but something would be left behind, right? The witness pool, incredibly small, and many of those available were already tangled up in the town's pervasive, bitter feuds, which could easily make them less than cooperative. Plus, remember that heavy rainfall on the night Patty disappeared? That could have washed away vital clues, footprints, tire tracks, you name it. But one of the most significant factors pointing away from an accident and towards something more sinister was the disappearance of his dog, Kelly. This is huge, you guys. Police and locals alike really emphasize this point. As one local mechanic, Mark Rayner, put it, find the dog, you find Patty. It's just highly, highly uncharacteristic for a loyal dog like Kelly to vanish alongside her owner if Patty had simply wandered off or had a medical episode. Typically, a dog would either stay with its owner or it would try to return home or it would seek help. The fact that Kelly was also missing strongly suggested that whoever was responsible for Patty's disappearance also dealt in some way with Kelly, maybe to eliminate a witness or to get rid of any trace that could lead back to Patty. This crucial detail was instrumental in shifting the police investigation towards a presumption of foul play. The absence of Kelly changed the whole narrative. It made the human element, those bitter, simmering feuds of Larrimah, even more critical to scrutinize. If Kelly was gone too, it wasn't just an old man wandering off. Something bad happened to the both of them. Okay, so we've established Larrimah was tiny, but harmonious? Oh, absolutely not.
What do you like about living here in this place?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I don't mind it. Good. Yeah. I'll come up to the pub here and have a good drinks and everything like that. Meet Barry, all the locals, you know. Well, I won't say too much about everyone, but, you know.
Oh, well, let's talk about that a bit. How does everyone get on in this little town?
They don't. No.
This was a town steeped in animosity, a place where long-held grudges and open hostility were pretty much the norm, not the exception.
I look like a killer.
I'm not a I'm too busy to do that.
It was described by some as a town of 11 people who mostly hated each other. I mean, can you imagine? The atmosphere must have been thick with tension all the time. It seemed like everyone was kind of just fed up with each other. And this undercurrent of conflict naturally became a central focus of the investigation into Patty's disappearance.
So for all that, you like it here, eh?
Oh, I love it. I love it. Once they go, and that's it. They're the main. Bobby and Carl.
The most notorious of these conflicts, the one that got all the media attention, was dubbed the Pie Wars. Seriously, you can't make this stuff up. This bitter rivalry centered around Fran Hodgett's Devonshire Tea House and the Larrimah Hotel, the Pink Panther Pub. What might seem like a trivial competition over selling pies to passing tourists, it escalated into this whole saga of backstabbing and sabotage. Honestly, when I first watched the documentary and I came across Fran, I thought it was a joke. I was like, this can't be a real person because she is a legit character. The things she says are funny, but to her, they're real. She really means everything she's saying. And in a town of 11 people, you're kind of like, damn, people really, really take these things seriously. And it makes sense. Fran had lived in the Northern Territory for 50 years, 45 of those in Larrimah. She had the tea house for over 35 years, And she met Patty 30 years prior at the Daily Waters Hotel. They were initially on good terms at the time Patty moved in across the road from her tea house. However, things kind of soured after Fran and her husband Billy divorced because allegedly Patty took Billy's side. Fran was renowned for her exotic meat pies. We're talking camel, buffalo, crocodile. These were a cornerstone of her business and her local identity. And Patty, he threw himself into this pie war with absolute gusto, openly antagonizing Fran. He even put up a sign outside his own property declaring that the best pies in Larrimah were to be found at the pub. He'd actively tried to steer potential customers away from Fran's tea house. He famously quipped that even his dog Kelly wouldn't touch Fran's pies. Burn.
If you want to talk to me, you old cunt, talk to me. And you bloody gasbaggers, friends, and I'll fucking tell you straight, you old mull.
Fran made multiple complaints to the police about Patty interfering with her. I mean, it sounds funny when you're listening to the things that they say, but then if it's Fran's business, it's understandable her being so pissed. Fran made multiple complaints to the police about Patty interfering with her, like stealing her $200 umbrella or messing with her garden hose, stalking her, driving customers away from her tea house. The feud between Patty and Fran, along with her live-in gardener Owen Laurie, was particularly intense. And according to coroner Greg Kavanaugh, who we'll talk about more later, it was escalating in the periods leading up to Patty's disappearance. Fran accused Patty of repeatedly poisoning her plants, which was a major point of contention for her. Another famous incident involved Patty allegedly throwing a dead kangaroo into Fran's bedroom or onto her property, I guess, as some kind of putrid prank. I mean, come on, guys, this is crazy. Arguments also erupted over Patty's dog Kelly. Owen, Fran's gardener, reportedly threatened to shut that fucking dog up. Patty's alleged retort was just as confrontational, warning Owen to shut your mouth or I'll take your knees out from under you. And he even mentioned he possessed a baseball bat, the same bat later found under his bed. So that $200 red umbrella that Fran said Patty stole, well, he denied it, but a similar red umbrella was reportedly seen on his property. And it wasn't just the pie wars. Larrimah's history was peppered with other strange conflicts that contributed to its Civil War atmosphere. There was the mystery of a stolen $17,000 train. Yes, a train. Accusations of mail theft, bird poaching, arson, illegal alcohol sales, the covert installation of speed bumps by residents, and even one resident being banned from the pub for allegedly stealing a Mars bar. One of the more bizarre tales mentioned in the Lost in Larrimah podcast involved a donkey penis incident. I kid you not, cited as a possible, albeit very strange, catalyst for the feud between Fran and Patty. Apparently, Patty threw a severed donkey penis onto Fran's front yard. He also put up signs suggesting maybe there was human flesh cooked into her meat pies, saying, "Sweeney's pies sold here." No wonder she had it out for him. It just underscores the often crude and outlandish nature of the local culture and their disputes. Now, these feuds in Larrimah may seem silly to us, but to them, they weren't just minor disagreements. They were prolonged, they were public, and they often involved acts of sabotage and pretty nasty verbal abuse. I mean, for Patty to shamelessly throw animal carcasses onto his neighbor's property, I mean, would your neighbor ever do that over a meat pie? The isolation of the town meant that these conflicts had no natural outlet. They just festered, becoming a normalized, toxic part of their existence. In an environment like that where intense and ongoing harassment was just normal, you have to wonder if the threshold for more extreme actions might have been dangerously lowered. That constant antagonism could have created this pressure cooker situation where a violent outburst, while still shocking, might have been seen by some as an almost inevitable end to years and years of accumulated bitterness. So, with this backdrop of bitter feuds and open hostility, suspicion, not surprisingly, fell pretty heavily on those with whom Patty had the most acrimonious relationships. First up, Fran. At the time, she was 75 years old and the owner of the Devonshire Tea House, which was situated directly across the road from Patty's place. Their long-standing and really venomous feud was common knowledge in Larrimah. Everyone knew about it. During the Coronial inquest, a witness named Wayne Ledwig testified that back in 2017, he and another man named Brian Roberts encountered Fran in the nearby town of Catherine. According to Wayne, Fran approached Brian and in this loud and abrupt manner apparently stated, "That bastard Patty is still giving me a hard time. I need to get rid of him." She allegedly even mentioned having $9,000 and some reports say $10,000 at home that she could use for this purpose, like a hit. Fran, for her part, vehemently denied ever offering money to have Patty killed. In an ABC News interview, she just dismissed these accusations, claiming that saying, "I'll kill you" was merely a matter of speech for her and that she couldn't hurt a flea. Right. While she did admit that Larrimah was a better place without Patty, which is a pretty telling statement, she insisted she had absolutely no involvement in his disappearance.
No, I hated his guts, but I never spoke to him.
Okay.
I know he'd done a lot of damage here for 10 years. And
He was a big supporter of the PIES down the pub,
Yeah, that's
wasn't
right,
he?
yes.
Ultimately, the police found no direct hard evidence linking Fran to Patty's vanishing. Then there's Owen Laurie. He was 70 years old at the time and he was Fran's live-in gardener, like I mentioned. So he resided on a small bungalow on her property, and he also had his own share of disputes with Patty, particularly concerning their respective dogs. Remember the threat about Kelly? Now, the most chilling evidence related to Owen emerged from secret police recordings. This is where it gets really creepy, you guys. Investigators had placed a listening device, a bug, in Owen's home, and they captured 8 recordings that were later played at the inquest, and they are disturbing. In these recordings, a man who police alleged was Owen was heard talking and even singing to himself in this really graphic and disturbing manner about Patty's demise. Some of the alleged statements included, and trigger warning here, this is pretty grim. This is what he said on the recordings. "I killer-rated old Patty with that fucking killer-rated him. I struck on the fucking head and killer-rated him. Struck him on the fucking head and killer-rated the bastard. Smacked him on the fucking nostrils with me claw hammer. Well, they didn't fucking find the hammer. Well, they can't get me for anything. You fucking killed Patty. Dunged him on the head. You gotta find out who fucking done it, mate. That's if you don't find the fucking body to find out who done it. I kill you myself. I kill. I kill pup dog. I kill pup dogs. Ha 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 ha. See you. Goodbye." I mean, that kind of sums up Australian slang perfectly. It's wild. Despite the incredibly graphic nature of these recordings, Owen told the inquest that the voice on the tapes was not his. He denied any involvement in Patty Moriarty's disappearance. He also declined to be interviewed for the Last Stop Larrimah documentary, which is also very interesting. Other Larrimah residents were also looked at, of course. Richard Simpson, who was a former bartender at the Pink Panther pub, was one of the last people to see Patty alive and apparently had a reputation for being a bit volatile. He denied any involvement, and in turn, he tried to point suspicion towards Fran. Given the deeply interwoven and hostile relationships in Larrimah, you could argue that virtually every resident was considered a potential person of interest at some point. Now, those statements allegedly made by Fran and the ones captured from Owen's home are profoundly incriminating if you take them at face value, right? But, and this is a big but, translating those words into prosecutable evidence, something that would stand up in a criminal court, proved to be this massive hurdle. Fran's alleged offer to pay for Patty's murder, while a super serious claim, lacked independent corroboration. There was no proof of an actual agreement or even money changing hands. It remained an unproven allegation. Her defense that threatening to kill someone is just a common figure of speech, well, that was aimed at diminishing any perceived intent to harm Patty. Owen's recorded statements are undeniably graphic and specific. Killer rated him with a claw hammer, dunged him on the head, killing pups. It's chilling. Yet his denial that it was even his voice on the recordings, coupled with questions about the context of the statements, was he just boasting? Was he drunk? Was he mentally unwell and just vocalizing dark thoughts? And most critically, the lack of physical evidence directly linking him to the crime, like that claw hammer he mentioned, or most importantly, Patty's body. All of this created a significant degree of reasonable doubt for any prosecutor. The legal standard for a murder charge is exceptionally high. It demands proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and while feuds and suspicious ramblings make for a super compelling story, they don't always meet that rigorous legal threshold. So with no arrests and no body, the next step in trying to get some answers for Patty was a coronial inquest, and that's where all those testimonies took place that I mentioned earlier. And this was presided over by the Northern Territory coroner Greg Kavanaugh. Now, unlike a criminal trial where it's adversarial, right, prosecution versus defense, inquests in the Northern Territory are inquisitorial. That means that their main goal is to uncover the facts surrounding a death, not necessarily to assign criminal blame. The inquest into Patty's suspected death was held in two parts, first in June 2018 and then again in April 2022. Basically, every resident at Larrimah gave testimonies at the inquest. They all had to travel a couple hours over to the town of Catherine on these days. Key testimonies and evidence presented during this inquest included really detailed accounts of Patty's last known movements and the state of, his home was found in. People like Barry Sharp, the Pink Panther pub owner, and Richard Simpson, the former bartender, gave evidence. The court heard a lot about the escalating feud between Patty and his closest neighbors, Fran and Owen. All those arguments about alleged plant poisonings in the lead up to Patty's disappearance were then laid out. And of course, those secret recordings of Owen with their super disturbing content were a massive focal point of the proceedings. Additionally, Wayne Ledwig's testimony, the one about Fran allegedly offering money to get rid of Patty, was presented to the court. And then on April 7th, 2022, Coroner Kavanaugh delivered his findings. And they were pretty explosive. He formally declared that Patty Moriarty and his dog Kelly were dead. He concluded that Patty was likely killed on the very day he disappeared, December 16th, 2017. Because there was no body, the specific cause of death could not be determined. But here's the kicker. Coroner Kavanaugh stated, in his opinion, that Patty was killed in the context of, and likely due to the ongoing feud he had with his nearest neighbors. And he explicitly named Fran Hodgetts and Owen Laurie. Wow. The coroner suggested that on the night Patty vanished, he had come home from the hotel, put the mostly eaten roast chicken in the microwave, put his wallet on the table and his hat in his usual place, put the dog food in the dog's bowl, and got his own meal out of the freezer. He then went outside with his dog, and there is no evidence as to where he went. However, it is likely that the new plants at Fran's place were of some attraction to Patty, possibly drawing him out of his house and into what became a fatal confrontation. Concluding that offenses may have been committed in connection with the death, Coroner Kavanaugh referred the entire investigation to the Commissioner of Police and the Director of Public Prosecutions for further consideration. So, the coronial inquest provided this really strong public declaration pointing the finger directly at foul play by Patty's neighbors, fueled by their long-standing toxic feud. While the inquest allowed all this sensitive evidence like Owen's recordings and Wayne Ledwig's testimony to be aired publicly, giving a vivid picture of potential motives and actions, it also highlighted the limitations of the coronial system. You see, Northern Territory legislation prevents coroners from making explicit findings of criminal guilt, so they can say what they think happened based on the balance of probabilities, but they can't actually find someone guilty of a crime. So while the inquest offered a degree of moral resolution by identifying the likely circumstances and the individuals probably involved, it couldn't deliver criminal justice itself. It definitely set a public expectation for further action, but it also underscored that critical need for the police to somehow bridge that evidentiary gap if there was ever going to be a prosecution in Patty's disappearance. Following Coroner Kavanaugh's pretty damning findings in his referral, the ball was then in the court of the Director of Public Prosecutions. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen. Would there finally be charges? But then, more than 2 years after the inquest concluded, the DPP announced their decision, and it was that there is insufficient evidence to make out a charge against any person in relation to the disappearance of Patty Moriarty. The DPP provided no further comment on why they made that decision, just insufficient evidence. This outcome meant that despite the coroner's very strong opinion and all that compelling, albeit because circumstantial evidence presented at the inquest, no criminal charges would be laid. There was no body, no trail, no forensics, and no dog. Legally, Paddy Moriarty's disappearance and his suspected murder remain unsolved. No one has been held accountable. This decision, as you can imagine, was a massive source of frustration and disappointment for Paddy's friends, for the wider community that had followed this case so closely, and I'm sure for the police who worked on it. Kevin Horner, a former manager of the Larrimah Hotel who knew Paddy well, expressed how difficult this lack of closure was. The DPP's decision, which stands in such stark contrast to the coroner's findings, really highlights a critical evidentiary gap. See, coroners can make findings based on the balance of probabilities, basically what's more likely than not. It's a less stringent standard than what's required for a criminal prosecution. And the DPP, on the other hand, have to be satisfied that there is a reasonable prospect of conviction. That means that the evidence presented has to be capable of proving guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a much higher bar. So despite the incredibly disturbing nature of Owen's secret recordings and those allegations surrounding Fran's statements, her own statements to interviewers and other people, the big problems remained. The absence of Paddy's body, the absence of, a confirmed murder weapon that Clawhammer mentioned in the recordings was never found, and no definitive forensic links directly tying any specific individual to the crime. These likely proved to be impossible obstacles for a prosecution. Owen's denial that the voice on the tapes was his, and Fran's denial for any murder for hire plot, these have presented huge challenges in a criminal trial. But that's the first thing that Fran and Owen would do, is to deny those claims. And Owen's denial that the voice on the recordings was his is also funny that the police even accepted that as a statement, because who else was in his home? There are 11 people in the town. Couldn't they figure out whose voice it belonged to? The Larrimah case sadly serves as this really poignant example of how even strong suspicion and compelling circumstantial evidence from an inquest might not be enough to meet the rigorous demands of the criminal justice system. And it leaves this profound, unsettling sense of unresolved justice just hanging in the outback air. So where does that leave us? Well, the prevailing theory, the one strongly supported by Coroner Kavanagh's findings, is that Paddy Moriarty met with foul play, that he was killed by one or more of his neighbors, and that it all stemmed from those bitter ongoing feuds. Owen, because of the content of those secret recordings, remains a very significant person of interest. Fran also continues to be a figure of suspicion given the sheer intensity of her feud with Paddy and those allegations about a murder for hire plot. What about the theory of accidental death or misadventure? Well, that's considered much less likely, primarily because of Kelly, his dog, disappearing at the same time. Remember, if Paddy had just suffered an accident or a medical emergency out in the bush, it's widely believed that his loyal dog Kelly would have been found with him, or she would have made her way back to Larrimah. Her absence is a massive red flag against the accident theory. No trace of the two of them, not even a shirt, her dog collar, or anything, makes it seem like, someone got rid of both of them. Now, the unique and often bizarre nature of Larrimah itself has also fueled some more speculative and sometimes pretty sensationalized theories. These often get highlighted in media portrayals of the case. So there's this grim idea that Paddy was fed to crocodiles, possibly to the one that was kept in the enclosure at the Larrimah Hotel. Now, this enclosure was searched by police, by the way. Or that he fell into one of the region's many sinkholes or old forgotten mine shafts. And then there's that dark joke that circulated, that Paddy was baked into Fran's pies. While that was never a serious line of police inquiry, although police claim that they have investigated this theory, it became this gruesome symbol of the town's feuds and the pervasive dark mystery surrounding his disappearance. These more outlandish theories, while they're not substantiated by any evidence, they definitely contribute to the case's outback gothic allure. It's like they reflect the community's own storytelling traditions and its pretty dark sense of humor. Larrimah's isolated setting and its cast of eccentric characters just naturally lend themselves to these kinds of narratives. While the core of this case is almost certainly a suspected homicide, rooted in a very human, very bitter conflict, all that surrounding weirdness has just amplified its public fascination. It's turned it into this modern outback legend, and sometimes that can overshadow the tragic reality of a man's unsolved disappearance and likely murder. So many critical questions still hang in the air unanswered. What precisely, exactly transpired on the night of December 16th, 2017, after Paddy left the Pink Panther pub on his quad bike? If he had settled in for the evening, as the scene in his house suggests, why did Paddy go outside his house? The coroner suggested he might have been drawn out by those new plants at Fran's place, maybe to tamper with them again. Did she plant them on purpose to lure him in? She knew he was trying to mess with her, but we don't know for sure. And the biggest one, where are the remains of Paddy and his dog Kelly? Without a body, this case is incredibly hard to solve definitively. Will that $250,000 reward, $250,000 offered for information leading to a resolution, ever yield a breakthrough? Someone out there must know something, and in a town like Larrimah, if one wanted to leave, that money would sure be handy. The disappearance of Paddy Moriarty and the intense investigation and media spotlight that followed placed an immense strain on the already dwindling and fractured community of Larrimah. The town's population has continued its decline since 2017. Some residents have moved away, others have passed on. For many, Larrimah is now irrevocably defined by this dark, unsolved mystery. It's like a shadow hanging over the place, potentially overshadowing its longer, more varied history. The case's peculiar, almost unbelievable elements have ensured its place in the records of true crime. It spawned a whole heap of media projects. There's this Walkley Award-winning Lost in Larrimah podcast, the Netflix documentary Last Stop Larrimah, which brought the story to a massive international audience. Books and even a loosely based Stan original television series called Population 11 was also spawned from this. This international attention, it keeps the mystery alive, which is good in one sense, but it also places this tiny, fragile town and its few remaining inhabitants under an intense and I'm sure often uncomfortable microscope. Larrimah itself, with its cast of colorful, eccentric characters and its dark, simmering undercurrents, has almost become a character in a familiar true crime trope. The isolated, quirky small town that harbors a deadly secret. The very elements of this story, the minuscule population, the ferocious feuds, those bizarre local incidents like the pie wars and the dead kangaroo, the huge town crocodile, the donkey penis, all culminating in this baffling disappearance, they are just inherently fascinating. There's also a risk of Larrimah and its people becoming caricatures, sort of like outback oddities, which could obscure the very real human tragedy at the heart of it all. The town's future is now indefinitely linked to this dark, unfinished chapter. What happens to Larrimah when the last resident leaves? So, a 70-year-old Irish-Australian man and his devoted Kelpie dog Kelly vanished from the face of the earth in the tiny outback town of Larrimah. The coroner even named them Fran Hodgetts and Owen Laurie. Yet, due to what the DPP deemed insufficient evidence to meet the high bar of beyond a reasonable doubt for a criminal trial, no charges have ever been laid. No one has been arrested and convicted for Paddy's death. The case officially remains open, and that hefty $250,000 reward for information still lies unclaimed. And the dusty red earth roads of Larrimah continue to hold their secrets very, very tight. So what do you guys think happened to Paddy and Kelly? This is one of those cases where everyone has a theory. Was it one of the neighbors finally driven to the absolute edge by years and years of feuding? Was Owen's recorded confession real, or just the ramblings of an old, perhaps troubled man? Did Fran have more to do with it than she let on? Or is there another, even stranger explanation lost somewhere out there in the vastness of the Northern Territory? I genuinely want to know your theories, so drop them in the comments below. Let's discuss it. If you found this deep dive into the Larrimah mystery as intriguing and as frustrating as I did, please, please, please give this video a big thumbs up, guys. And don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on the next video. Every like, every subscribe, every share, it really does help, and it does mean a lot to me. And most importantly, you guys, this is a real person we're talking about. Paddy Moriarty deserves justice. If you have any information, however small or insignificant as it may seem, about the disappearance of Patty, please contact Crime Stoppers in Australia. You can remain completely anonymous. The details are in the description box below. Before you go, don't forget to check out the exclusive NordVPN deal. You can get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan plus 4 months free by going to nordvpn.com/Zara. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Until next time, stay safe and look out for each other. Love you guys. Besitos. Mwah. Bye.